Alrighty, so another late night edition when it comes to recording on this channel because I've been out pretty much the whole day, just got back home. And today, for this late night edition of doing a video on my channel, we're going to do the emotion index of March 2026 because as we are now 5 games into the season and heading into the March international break. And yes, I did double check to make sure there's going to be no MLS games that's going to be taking place during the international break because we've seen that before. And indeed, this is going to be one of the rare times that there is going to be no games that's going to take place. So this means that it definitely gives me a whole week to do stuff on this channel related to MLS and maybe even talk about the US as well heading into this international break. Maybe even do a review of one of those couple of friendlies that they will be playing in March. But yeah, like I said, mostly this is a great opportunity for me to do videos, talk about teams that got to a good start and then teams that have kind of got to a disastrous start. But this video, of course, we're going to look at all 30 MLS teams, talking about their fan base of whether or not after 5 games, is this a dream start for them, ideal start for them. The middle tier, as always, is the man tier. Could be better, could be worse. The fourth tier obviously is not the start that we wanted. And then, of course, I'm actually going to be introduced the panic part of the emotion index. I usually never introduce the panic part of the emotion index after their 5 match day, and especially this early into the season. But there are definitely some teams that are already in that panic state, even though we're just 1 month into the new season and 5 games into the new season. So with that being said, let us begin. And as always, we're going to go alphabetical order, starting off with Atlanta United. And I want to put Atlanta right here. So Atlanta, I think it's been the definition of could be better and could be worse because they've been a very inconsistent team to begin the season. There are definitely signs that we've seen Tata Martino, finally start to get Atlanta playing like they used to or during the glory days. A great example of that was a couple of weeks ago when they played against the Union. That was definitely one of their better performances they had. But then there's also some kind of meh kind of performance like the last game against DC, and some really bad performance like the one that they had against the Quakes a couple of weeks ago. But honestly, if you're an Atlanta fan, you take it. I mean, it's been so bad in terms of how things have gone for this team, especially last season as well. You take the fact that you rather see a team that is inconsistent and show some promise than a team that is consistently bad, like what we saw last season and pretty much the whole season. Of the reason why this team desperately need another change of the head coaches, and hope that bring more nostalgia by bringing Tata Martino back. Maybe the answer in terms of solving all the tons of issue that this team have, both on the head coaching part and also in terms of the roster construction as well. Then we look at Austin FC. You know, I'm gonna put Austin kind of right there in the same category, but a little bit lower because for Austin, there's no doubt that goal scoring. Again, it's like Atlanta, where there's been times where they have been able to score the goals, and there's times that they haven't done so. And I think Austin fans would take that because last season that was the big issue with this team. They have had a lot of issue when it comes to goal scoring last season. It's gotten a little bit better this season as well. Big part of that is the acquisition of Facu Torres. It seems like he's definitely playing his part for Austin so far in the beginning of the year. But the problem for Austin, of why I don't put them too high, is the fact that they're still dropping points that they definitely shouldn't be able to do. There's still some frustration part of that. A great example, it was the first game of the season, and then their road form has not been great whatsoever. I mean, I think they lost both of their road games so far to begin the season. Not ideal as well, and they definitely can see more goals than what we see last season. Last season, this was definitely one of the better defensive team, and they had to, because when you don't score a lot of goals, you got to make sure you have a lockdown defense, or else you're not going to be a playoff team, which last season Austin was. So yeah, I think if you're an Austin fan, obviously it definitely could be a lot better in terms of how they play, but it could be a lot worse in terms of the fact that the attack is a slightly improved compared to what we saw last season as well. Now, looking at Charlotte, for Charlotte, I'm going to kind of put them right here. I know Charlotte, when you look at where they are in the standings, they're pretty high up in the standings, but it is a bit misleading. And the thing I will say that is kind of misleading for Charlotte in terms of where they are in the standings is that I don't really think they've been playing very well so far to begin the season. The 2 games that they won, both of the time they were up a man, and they definitely played much better when they are up a man, which that's kind of what you expected when you have a team that is up a man, though not necessarily because we've seen this season where teams that are down to 10 men sometimes can be a better against their opposition that is up a man. But in the case of Charlotte, they're taking a full advantage of being a man up. But here's the problem: you're not going to have those kind of games every single game. In fact, it's more rare than often the fact that you will have a chance to play down or play against an opponent that is down to 10 men. And when they go even strength, Charlotte has really struggle against their opposition, especially on the attacking end. I mean, they struggle in terms of generate chances when they're at even strength. And yeah, that is kind of the big concern you got to say with this team. I mean, I know Charlotte fans will also say that, well, maybe our attack have turned a corner when we score 6 goals past the Red Bulls. But like I said, I go back to what I said with the fact that most of those goals that they score came with when they were down, when the Red Bulls were down to 10 men. So yeah, again, there will definitely be more games where they're gonna be playing even strength, but they need to do much better in terms of that. If not, yeah, I would say things maybe they be a little their record may be a little bit misleading, and maybe heading toward that fraud kind of status in terms of the fact that they're not really as good as what you think the record said. So then we look at Chicago. Yeah, Chicago, I think it's an ideal start for them. I mean, yes, Chicago does have times where they drop points and stuff like that, in especially in a frustrating way, like the game against DC United, where they looked like they were going to get all 3 points, and then they kind of let it slip late in the game. But for the most part, they are definitely done a better job, at least at home in terms of how they play. We know this is a good road team, and they have shown that they continue to be able to win on the road. But the home form is kind of the big question with the Chicago team, and they definitely done a little bit better job, at least at home, in terms of how they're performing and also getting wins as well. Now, it's also important to note that Chicago hasn't really played a really tough schedule. It's been kind of an easy schedule to begin the season. So again, that's kind of the thing that I think what Fire fans kind of worried, the fact that last season, a lot of the reason why they finally ended that curse is they took a full advantage against playing against easy team. They always get the job done against easy team, but when they face against some tough teams, more times than not, they do not get the job done. I think that will be definitely a good measuring stick to see whether or not if Rick Berhalter and this Fire team have made improvement. The fact that it's not just about beating against teams that they should beat, but also now they face against some of the tougher teams in the Eastern Conference, the likes of Nashville, Miami, and even in some cases NYCFC as well, being right up there in the standings. How will they, of course, would fare them as the season goes along. Then we look at FC Cincinnati. Yeah, it's not the start that Cincinnati won. And honestly, if it wasn't for them coming back against Montreal and get the victory, I probably would have put them right here in the panic category because, as I said before, that loss against Tigres in the Concacaf Champions Cup. I mean, not only that was probably the most heartbreaking loss I've seen an MLS team has in the Concacaf Champions Cup, and probably the biggest collapse we have ever seen an MLS team have in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, but we've seen before where that can be definitely a lingering effect. And last game I will give props to FC Cincinnati, especially for Pat Nolan's side, the fact that they show a lot of resilience. That was huge in a way that after such a huge collapse that they had in the middle of the week, you would definitely wouldn't would kind of excuse them in the fact that they're probably going to follow that up with them completely falling apart against Montreal as well. But they showed some fight in that game, and that's why I think maybe Cincinnati fans might still have a little hope of this team. Maybe be that big win that they had against Montreal is what they needed. But in hindsight, this team is not playing very well so far in the beginning of the season. And I think the most alarming thing about this team, besides the fact that they definitely don't operate as well on the attack without Evander being there, is the fact that their defense have absolutely regressed this season. And that's shocking to see because, normally when we see a team that have their defense kind of turn bad, maybe it's because they lose a couple of key players. No, you look at the Cincinnati team, they didn't really lose any key defender. In fact, pretty much all their starting defender play throughout this season, guys like Miazga and Robinson, they've been partner with each other. Even Nick Haglund has been there after battling through some injuries as well, and all three of those guys have looked a step and a half off compared to what we see in previous season. And that I think has got to be very alarming if you're a Cincinnati fan, because there's one thing about the issue that they might have on the attacking end, especially some of the tactics that Pat Nolan put, maybe will frustrate Cincinnati fans of them not getting the best out of the attack. But now it's not. If your defense, which has been really your sure thing for the past couple of years, that's kind of fall apart, yeah, it's no wonder why Cincinnati fans are very frustrated with this team, and that, yeah, probably not the start that they were hoping for a team that are running back for look like what the third consecutive year, and it feels like that doesn't seem like it's a great idea whatsoever. Now we look at the Colorado Rapids. Um, this one's a bit tough because I'm gonna put the Rapids here just because of the fact that after that big win that they had against Sporting KC, at least they shown the fact that they, of course, were able to win on the road. But again, they beat Sporting KC. Sporting KC is going to be one of the worst team in the league this season, and probably a wooden spoon kind of contender this season as well. That's not nothing impressive. And the other road game that they have, they definitely didn't do so well. They definitely done much better at home, and that's not a big surprise. There always tends to be a good home team, especially playing in altitude. That always gets a huge advantage for the Colorado Rapids. But one thing I will say that the Rapids have done under Matt Wells is the fact that they've started becoming a very entertaining team to watch. This is a team that's not afraid to score a lot of goals. They've also conceded a lot of goals as well, and that is not a big surprise because I've said before how, heading into the season, the fact that they didn't address that back line, which was a pretty obvious issue heading into the season. It's no surprise their defense is not as good as they hope for. But this is always a team that I think if they want to have success, they simply need to outscore their opponent. And for the most part, they've been able to do that, especially at home. On the road, it's been kind of a different story when you look at this Rapids team. Now we look at Columbus next. Yeah, Columbus. I think they're kind of approaching this category where it is a disastrous start for Columbus. It's a disastrous start for Henry Rochum in terms of his tenure. And again, I'm still going to give him a benefit of the doubt. The fact that, again, anytime when you have a new head coach coming in, there's a couple ways you can see it. One, they can definitely get off to a great start, like what we saw with Jasper Sorensen and Mikey Veras, where everything kind of clicked instantly. But for all that always happen, people forget that that's not really always the norm when it comes to a new head coach coming in, especially a new head coach that is not very familiar with this league. I mean, Harry Rustrom never coached in MLS coming out of the Swedish league, and I talked about before where when you get a guy from the Swedish league have always produced some very hit and misses when it comes to coaches, and more times than not, it tends to be on the miss part. And I get what Rushem is trying to do when it comes to he's trying to keep the Wilfred Nancy system and trying to play that more heavy pressure kind of attack, but it just feels like something is off with that. It just doesn't feel like it's clicking as well as what Wilfred Nancy has got to this team. And again, I also think that there was always going to be that pressure in terms of him stepping in to this job after taking over a team that no doubt they still have a lot of talent, but you now take over of a team of a former head coach that has just kind of clicked this team and kind of play this team and clicking on all cylinder, that it's not easy. The fact that you can replicate that even if you have a familiar kind of style of play. When we look at DC United, I think for DC they'll be happy in terms of how the start has been. Yes, the last game it was a forgettable game. I think everybody can agree the fact that Atlanta and DC game is right up there between that and the Nashville versus Dallas game that we saw earlier this season, right up there in terms of the most boring game that we have seen this year. But honestly, for DC with a team that doesn't have like a lot of expectation, even though maybe some might say that they should, especially with all the signings and the makeover that they did this off season. The fact that they are definitely within the playoff race, and we'll see how long they'll stay there. We've seen this before with DC maybe in the playoff race in the beginning. Looked like they got off to a good start, and then they just completely fall apart for the rest of the season. We'll see whether or not they can keep this up. And for now, I think DC fans will be happy in terms of how they play, and especially they probably are giving a gift basket to the Philadelphia Union after getting Ty Burrito on their team because he has been a huge contributor of why this DC team has kind of got off to a pretty good start, and I say maybe a surprising good start to this season, considering a lot of people predict this team to finish at the bottom of the Eastern Conference. Then we look at FC Dallas. Yeah, I think for Dallas, not only it's an ideal start, I'm going to put them right up here. And this is not a big surprise. I mean, I was pretty high on Dallas. I think I picked them right up there in the top four of the season because last year I don't think it was a fluke in terms of how the second half of the season has played. They definitely played very well in the second half of the season, flying under the radar. Now heading into this season, I still think that for Dallas, if they want to be at the next level and want to be on the upper echelon of the Western Conference and compete with the likes of LAFC, Seattle, San Diego, and even Vancouver, they probably might need to find that number 10 that is still kind of missing for this team. But honestly, even if they don't find that number 10, it doesn't feel like it really affected because guys like Pedro Musa and Logan Farrington are just running riots with this team right now, especially Musa as well. What a start of the season he has had. Now, the one thing I will say for Dallas that is maybe a little concern, although I don't know if this is kind of a concern, this maybe is just kind of the way Peter Quo sets up his team, where Peter Quo, we know he's a very attacking minded manager, and when you have an attacking minded manager, obviously that comes in both ways, where you're going to score a lot of goals, but you're probably also going to concede a lot of goals, and we've seen so far this season that defense for Dallas has definitely took a step back compared to what we saw in the second half of the year. But again, I think that maybe it might not be that much of a concern, especially with the way that if this is kind of the style that Peter Cole sets up and continue to get resort, they'll definitely take it. They definitely have the firepower to outscore teams on a weekly basis. And yeah, so far it's been an ideal start for Dallas fan, and I think they're probably very happy the fact that that's kind of the reason why they brought in Peter Cole. They want to see more attacking brand of soccer and are away of the days of Nico Estevez kind of holding the team back, especially on the attack. Then we look at the Houston Dynamo. It's kind of a category. I mean, they have got a couple of big wins to begin the season as well, but there's also kind of resort like what we saw in the Texas Derby, where besides that big Spurs that they had in the 10 minute spell to completely turn the game upside down, they didn't really play very well in that Texas Derby as well. Their defense, obviously, as I mentioned in the beginning of the year, the fact that they didn't really address that is got to be a concern. But the attack is definitely a lot better, and a big part of the attack is being better isn't because of Mateo Bogusz being there. I mean, Bogusz has contribute somewhat, but it's got to be the resurgence of Guilherme. I mean, I did not expect Guilherme to be this good to begin the season. I mean, I had my doubts, and I think a lot of Dynamo fans have their doubts, especially the numbers that he put in his last club. But he has definitely carried that into this team, and like I said, he's contributed a lot more than I thought he would be. And that's kind of helped the Dynamo at least be a lot more entertaining team to watch compared to last season, where it was at times kind of unwatchable in terms of how they do on the attacking end. Then we look at Sporting KC. This might shock a lot of Sporting KC fans that I put them this high. For a team that is dead last in the Western Conference and a team that for the most part hasn't performed very well, when you look at their record and their points table, you would think I'm crazy to put them that high up in the standings. But allow me to explain. And I know Sporting KC fans might not agree with what I'm about to say, but I don't think they're as bad as what their record has said. And I've said this many times with Sporting KC in this season games. I think the effort is there with this team. It's pretty clear that obviously the talent is not there, and that no, their defense is a huge black hole right now as it is in previous year. But even with that, they're still for the most part have been in these games. I mean, I really think that even in the last game against Colorado, if you just ignore what happened in the last 15 minutes where they completely fell apart, they were in that game against the Colorado Rapids. They were showing some effort at least on the attacking end to maybe even get the lead or keep toe to toe with their opposition, and that's I think is all what Sporting KC fans is asking this season. I know there's going to be some Sporting KC fans that might think that's too low of a bar, but that's what happened when you're in the midst of a rebuild. This team is in the midst of this painful rebuild, and you could say that this team is in the midst of cleaning up the mess that the old regime has put in. So you can't really set a high bar on this team and the fact that, again, with the way that they have looked competitive and that, if you just ignore it, I think the only game where I can say that the Sporting KC team definitely didn't look competitive and didn't put in the effort is the opening game against San Jose Earthquakes. That is really the only game I can say that they haven't put in the effort. All the games I watch, Sporting KC put, you can definitely see the effort being there. And again, if that is going to be the case, I would say this is considered a good season for Sporting KC. Even though, again, I know a lot of SKC fans are going to disagree with me because at the end of the day, resort is what matters, and yeah, the resort has definitely not been there for Sporting KC. Not a big surprise considering the quality that they have compared to the rest of the league. There's a huge golf difference because of it. Well, we look at the LA Galaxy. Yeah, it's not the start that the Galaxy wanted. And while they've done well in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, but I think the reason why they've done so well in the CONCACAF Champions Cup is because they've been playing against minnows. Now they have to play against Toluca, and oh boy, I can't imagine how that's going to end up. Considering this is a team that they have their struggle, especially on the attacking end. It feels like it's the second season in a row where they desperately missed Ricky Pooch on this team. I mean, the other attacking talent, I would say Joe Kloss for the most part has done well, though he has had his inconsistency. I mean, forever many times where he has able to contribute on the goal scoring. There's times where he has missed a lot of chances, especially in that CONCACAF Champions Cup game against Mount Pleasant, of how frustrating it was for him to miss all those chances and even have a goal that was chopped off because of him getting a handball in the moment. But yeah, besides him, there's really not a lot of contribution in terms of the attacking end. And I think the big concern and the thing that's got to frustrate Galaxy fans is that once again, both Peck and Painter, two guys that are supposed to really carry this team and maybe have a bounce back year. Not only they didn't have a bounce back year, but both of those guys seems like they have regressed even more heading into this season as well. And I know what Galaxy fans will say. Well, Peck has actually still scored goals. Yeah, that's in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. In league plays, he has not done the same thing, and that is gotta be the most alarming thing. The fact that if you just don't look at how the Galaxy have been playing the CONCACAF Champions Cup when they play against minnows, they have not looked good when they do face it against MLS opposition. It looks like this could be another long year for the Galaxy as well, and that's gotta be very frustrating for Galaxy fans. The fact that again, I know Ricky Puig is the metronome of this team, but with the improvement that they have, at least especially on the attacking end, the fact that they struggle as mightily as they are on the attacking end, that's got to be very very discouraging and kind of the reason why they have definitely not gone off to the start that they wanted. Now, their crosstown rival LAFC is a different story. LAFC is definitely right up there, and I don't really need to explain too much of why LAFC is right up there. It's been a dream start for this team. They have slowed down a little bit, at least in these last couple of games. They're not as threatening as what we saw in the beginning of the year, but it doesn't matter. I mean, this is a team that have definitely got off to a great start to the season. Mark Dos Santos have definitely silenced a lot of the doubters about this team potentially might underachieve under him. And I guess maybe this is one of those situation and one of those rare situation where I said that even if we have a mediocre head coach, if you have the talent like LAFC has, it doesn't really matter. The talent is definitely going to carry the team, and right now the high end talent of this team, especially on the attack, it's really carrying this team a lot going forward throughout the season. Then we look at Inter Miami. I'm gonna put them right here. I know it's good. It might sound low to put Inter Miami at the could be better or could be worse category, but The reason why I would say for Inter Miami that they're pretty low, despite the fact that when you look at their record actually is not bad. I mean, this is still considered to be one of the better team when you look at where they are in the standings. But that's not what really matters with this team. What is very frustrating if you're an Inter Miami fans to begin the season is the CONCACAF Champions Cup. That was supposed to be a competition that they've been saying that they want to take seriously and want to have some redemption after what happened last year, and they got knocked out by Nashville SC. Now, to be fair, I think that matchup against Nashville that was probably one of the worst matchup they could get at least in the first round. Probably one of the tougher matchup that they're going to get. Even though I know Inter Miami has had their good history against Nashville. I've said this before. All good history or all narrative eventually is going to come to an end. Your opposition eventually is going to maybe get a win or two after you dominate them throughout the years. And with the way how Nashville has looked like an unstoppable force, I don't think there was a lot of people that are surprised the fact that Nashville was going to give Inter Miami a lot of challenges, and they did exactly that. So that has got to be a huge discouragement for a lot of Inter Miami fans because as much as they could win MLS Cup again, it's got to be very bitter the fact that the one competition that they really want to win, which is the CONCACAF Champions Cup, and now they're not even in it because of the elimination that they had against Nashville SC. And I think the other concerning factor with Inter Miami, besides the CONCACAF Champions Cup, as I just plugged my my laptops in or my chargers into the laptop because it was running out of battery. Is the fact that even with some of the wins that they haven't looked impressive in these wins. And I know there's going to be some people who will say, well, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter how impressive that you look if you get the 3 points. That's all it matter. And in many ways, the high end talent of this Inter Miami team has really carried them. But when you look at some of the resort that they have, even in some of the wins, there is still a lot of concern with this team, especially on the defensive end. They haven't looked good on the defensive end this season. I mean, Messi can do all the bailout job and whatsoever, but with the way that they haven't looked good on the defensive end at time, and the fact that there's been times where they have looked really stagnant going forward on the attack, that was kind of the reason why they end up getting eliminated against Nashville and getting that draw in the second leg. The fact that they were being so complacent in that game and being very stagnant, like what we saw in the first two games of the season, that's another thing that I think Inter Miami fans are very concerned about this team. Even with the good start that they have, the fact that this team hasn't really played the way that they have, and also some of the signings that they made this offseason that was supposed to be great signing, yeah. Let's not talk about Herman Betarame in terms of just an absolute horror start to the season. Have already started to turn probably one of the biggest bust signing we have seen in this offseason as well. I mean, it's gotten so bad the fact that he pretty much virtually almost are getting benched after in the last game where that was really kind of a message sent. The fact that he didn't actually start in the last game, he actually came off the bench. He did actually eventually did score a goal in the last game, but then the flag, of course, this allowed that because that's just been kind of the luck that Herman Betarame has had ever since he's been putting on the Inter Miami jersey and have come play in MLS. Now, looking at Minnesota, uh, I'm going to put Minnesota here where, yes, it's definitely not the star that I want the Loons to have, especially with the way that there's a lot of problems with this team. I mean, it's not just the defense that is a concern, though they got a lot better in the last game against Seattle. That was a much needed the game for this defense to recover. I know it didn't result into a win, and obviously we'll definitely talk about the problem with the attack as well. They've only scored 4 goals this season, and that as much as Yeboah kind of got off to a great start to the season, things haven't really been on his point for the last couple of games. But I will say that as much as I do worry about the attack and also the defense as well, especially without Michael Boxall, you can clearly see how much of a mess that this defense is and missing the leadership skill that he has to make that back line to be solid day in and day out. I'm gonna give Minnesota maybe a bit of a mulligan because of the way that, as I said, they probably had the toughest schedule out of any team to begin the first 5 game of the season. And I know some might say that that might sound like an excuse, but when you have a team that have a new head coach and implement a system that is completely different than Eric Ramsey, the way that he sets up, it's no wonder why this team hasn't really got off to a great start. And there's just also been a lot of inconsistency as well. There's going to be that growing pains as well. But I have no doubt that if this team can get themselves back on track when they do get to play against some easier team, and once Cam Newton can finally get rid of that thing that feels like the other thing I've seen in the first 5 games that has been very common with this Loons team is the fact that they started at times go back to the old habits of just defending way too deep and basically only relying on the transition and also on the counterattack. And unlike last season where it was very successful, this season it hasn't been, and that's kind of the thing that Cam knows have said about this team that they can't afford to just keep doing that. They need to actually for once keep possession and actually trying to build in because every team know exactly how to play against Minnesota. As long as you're able to pin them deep, and especially with them not being as dangerous on the set piece and transition, as we saw last season, it's pretty easy to shut down this Minnesota attack, and this is why I said that hopefully this attack will get going when the way that one they play against a more easier opponent, but two giving Cam Nolas maybe some time to figure out the attack and maybe finally get it click. Maybe this team will start to perform much better of what just have kind of been a very rough start for this team. I mean, a very predictable rough start to the season. I mean, when I mentioned this team in my season preview, talk about their first 5 games, I had a feeling this was going to be a rough start for the Loons, especially the daunting opponent that they have to face with the likes of Nashville, Vancouver, and Seattle recently that they have to face. Then we look at Montreal. I'm gonna say Montreal. It's been not the start that they want, but honestly, like Sporting KC, it's kind of the same thing. You kind of expect this team to be bad this season. In fact, I probably should have put in another category of saying we expect it to be bad, and I would definitely put Sporting KC there and Montreal being there because we know both of these teams are gonna be bad. Now, the reason why I'm gonna put Montreal a little bit lower compared to Sporting KC, unlike where Sporting KC at least shows some fight, and I can definitely see the effort there, can't say the same thing about Montreal this season. I mean, maybe besides the only game where I think they really shows some effort and some potential is the game against the Red Bulls, which unsurprisingly they were able to win that. But in the other games that they play, I mean, they just look like a really bad team. Like you're a very bad team when you both time when you're up a man in this season, and both time you end up losing the games. It's and I again go back to what I said. Just because you're up a man doesn't mean that you're always going to win the game, but it's crazy to see. Like that first game against Chicago when they were up a man, it was absolutely insane to see how they were up a man in that game, and they were still getting outplayed by Chicago, even probably getting even more outplay than they did when it was at even strength. And that's kind of the alarming thing for this Montreal team, and that's kind of the reason why the fan base are very frustrated with this team, and especially the who owner is in charge of this team as well. Now looking at Nashville. Yeah, Nashville, it's a dream start for them. Just like LAFC, don't really need to mention too much of why Nashville. It's been a dream start for this team as well. I mean, BJ Callen has got that team clicking on all cylinder. I mean, that front three with Mukta, Espinoza, and Surridge, and especially Surridge himself. I mean, what a start of the season has had. Right up there in terms of what we saw with Baribo when he got off to a great start this season as well. I mean, Sam Surridge, he's a goal scoring machine. He is going to be a guy that's going to definitely gunning for the golden boot and trying to win it this season after missing out last year as well. But yeah, this national team, it is a well-drilled machine. I mean, if the season ended right now in the regular season and heading into the playoffs, I would say Nashville is dead on the favorite to win MLS Cup. That's how good they have been so far this season, and it's not just how they perform in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, getting that big win against Inter Miami, but the fact that even in league play they still can do well and still putting some punishment against teams that unfortunately have to face them. this is a team that is going to be a problem in the Eastern Conference, and this is going to be a team that I would not be surprised if they might finish first in the East and maybe even gun for the Supporter Shield as well. That's how good this has been in the beginning of the season. Then we look at New England. Yeah, New England's kind of the opposite. It's been a disastrous start for this team. I mean, besides that one game that they had where they scored 6 goals against a Cincinnati team that was already on the downward turn, I mean, nothing really has gone right for a Marko Mitrovic team in the first 4 games. And I will also say that I'm going to give maybe him a little bit of a mulligan, considering that, as I said before, just because you have a new head coach coming in, and we've seen before where new head coach coming in get that new head coach lose and eventually have a great first season. It doesn't always work like that, especially when you have a head coach that maybe are trying to change things and trying to implement his tactics that may take times to get things going. Maybe this might be the case with Marko Mitrovic again, just for this New England team to learn his system and eventually thrive into it. Yeah, it's gonna take time, but for now, it hasn't been a great start to his tenure, and it seems like the team is just they just don't know exactly how they can fit all the system that they have, and especially some of the young guys that Mitrovic tried to play with this New England team. It just haven't really quite worked out the way that he hoped for this upcoming year. Now, moving on to the New York Red Bulls. Yeah, I would say the New York Red Bulls are starting heading in the downward category in the emotion index. If this was after 2 weeks, I would put them right here where it's a dream start for this team. But yeah, reality is definitely starting to hit hard with Michael Bradley's side. And the thing about the Red Bulls, what's kind of frustrating is the fact that, yeah, as I mentioned with young guys before, unless of course you're an RSL, where we'll definitely talk about in just a bit how it feels like that might be an outlier with them. But when you, of course, just play a lot of young guys, as Michael Bradley seems to do, it feels like Michael Bradley, the way that he has put the team together, he's really the almost like putting all the guys from Red Bulls to, and hope that it of course worked out. And I don't blame that of course is the case, because him coaching that team last year and then winning MLS Next Pro. He thinks that might, of course, will work out week in and week out in MLS as well. But in reality, that's just not how it is. Again, that's the dangers, of course, playing your kids. The fact that there are going to be times where there's going to be consistency issue, and especially when we get to the rough period where maybe some of these kids might not be performing as the way that they are, which I think we're definitely starting to seeing it with both Mehmeti and Hall, two of those young talent not performing the way that they are compared to what we saw in the first 2 games. Will be very interesting to see how Michael Bradley will adjust, and maybe he might think about going back to some of his veteran as well. It's kind of crazy that he hasn't really relied too much of his veteran. I mean, guys like Choupo-Moting hasn't really got a lot of minutes this season, because it's pretty clear that Michael Bradley is leaning very heavily on the young guns and a lot of the players that he used to coach in the second team of the Red Bulls, winning MLS Next Pro last year. And well, of course, it worked out in the first 2 games. It hasn't really quite worked out, at least in the last couple of games, especially in the last game against Charlotte, where I think that game is another one of those ones where yes, they got absolutely demolished in that one. But if you actually watch the game, they had their moments in that game. They have their chances, and I think that's another thing that is a problem with the Red Bulls this season, where even when they have times where a lot of these young guns have played relatively well, they're not able to put away chances and show their clinical finishing. That has got to be something that's got to frustrate Michael Bradley. The fact that you can definitely build going forward on the attacking end, and you can have these young players uh, do all these great moves again to the final third. But if you don't put the ball into the back of the net, yeah, that's kind of the thing we're seeing with the Red Bulls lately. Now, with NYCFC, I'm gonna still say NYCFC is off to a dream start, and this is despite the fact that they lost the last game against Inter Miami in a very, very controversial fashion in the last game, with the blown call that we saw late in the game, where Dane Sinclair pretty clearly handballed it outside the box, but it wasn't being being called and wasn't overturned by VAR as well. But overall, they still been playing relatively well, and I think that concern in the beginning of the season with like not really any attacking talent, especially not really any clinical finisher besides Alonso Martinez, who's going to be shelled for most of this season. I think that concern is now been solved because Fernandez Marquez is just going off right now. I mean, he has been look like finally the guy that is the perfect replacement for Alonso Martinez, even though they're not a direct replacement as well. But yeah, I mean, I also think that ever since they beat Orlando 5-0 earlier this season, it feels like that was the game where it was a turning point for NYCFC, especially on the attack. Because before that game, their attack has been stale at best. But after that game, you can clearly see the confidence in the team, and it's kind of continued in these last couple of weeks, even in the loss that they had against Inter Miami in the last game. Then we look at Orlando City. Yeah, it's a disastrous start for Orlando City. I don't really need to mention too much, other than the fact that yes, Antoine Griezmann is coming to this team in the summer. We don't know how much is that going to solve this team and really move up too much of a needle of this team because it's not the attack that is a huge concern of this team. I mean, the attack is definitely a concern. I mean, a lot of these attacking talent guys like Pasalic and Ojeda, they have really underachieved this season, and it's very disappointing to see. But I think what's more disappointing is how bad their defense is, and also how bad Crepeau has been. I mean, I also think that part maybe is not a big surprise because we knew that Crepeau, he has had his rough times in these last couple of years, and the fact that again it just feels very strange when they decided to find a replacement for the goalkeeping solution after letting go of Galese. The fact that they thought Maxime Crepeau was the answer to do so. If this was maybe like 2019 or just a couple of years ago when Crepeau was able to win MLS Cup with LAFC, then there no doubt I think it would have been a great solution. But that's not the same Crepeau that we saw a couple of years ago. He has really struggled a lot last couple of years, and yeah, we're seeing it again this season as well. So I will also say that as much as he is gonna be painted as the main culprit of why this defense has been absolutely horrendous. Let's also not forget about the defense itself, and the back line hasn't really kind of do himself any favor as well. I mean, their back line has been pretty much non-existent, and all these signings that they made this off season to try to improve the back line has not worked whatsoever as well. Then we look at the Philadelphia Union, same place. Yeah, it's been a disastrous start, and as I said, I'll definitely do a video talking about that. I probably won't do a video talk about Orlando City in terms of their disastrous start because I've kind of already mentioned it with Oscar Pereira firing and the fact that with the firing of Oscar Pereira, I don't know if it's necessarily going to be any better with this team. But yeah, for the Philadelphia Union, coming off of winning the Supporter Shield, I think this is the first time we ever seen a Supporter Shield winner. We followed the very next year with 5 straight losses. Whatever curse that Bradley Cornell has in his second year, I mean, I don't know what is it with him, but it feels like it's happening again with his successful first season with the Union, just like he did with St. Louis, and now it's followed by just an absolute disastrous kind of season. Now, I will say that with the way that this team is right now, I'm not going to just fully blame Bradley Cornell for this. In fact, I think Bradley Cornell probably doesn't get justified for this blame. And in fact, I see a lot of Union fans don't really squarely point to the finger of Bradley Cornell, and I think it's understandable mainly because as we'll talk about and do a video talk about this disastrous start of the season for the Union. I think it's pretty clear that when they decide to gut the team for the second year in a row and going through a transitional period and trying to bring in some new guys to hope to fit the system, and it just have not been whatsoever. And while they kind of got away with that, at least in the off season in 2025, feels like they didn't get away with it this year as well. And I think the reason why they didn't get away with it is look at some of the guys that they lost. Guys like Ty Baribo, who's clearly thriving with DC United, and then Kyle Wagner. That is a huge loss for this team, especially the ability that he can deliver those crosses and be one of the most dangerous fullback playmaker in this league. I mean, take him out of this team, and then you also take out your top goal scorer of this team from last season as well, and no wonder why this Union team is struggling mightily, especially going for in front of goal as well. Now we look at the Portland Timbers. Yeah, let's make a hat trick when it comes to teams that is clearly in the panic stage. I know it's crazy. I've already put a lot of teams in the panic stage, but yeah, for the Portland Timbers, it's been a disastrous start. I mean, the last game, maybe it kind of you would have thought that it kind of saved them some blemish because of the way that I did say that it was a good point for the Portland Timbers, and it was because when they were down to 10 men for majority of the game, I mean, you expect them to hope to hold on to get a point, which they did exactly that. But unfortunately, that doesn't really solve the fact that they haven't won a single game ever since opening day as well. And while that game, at least the other positive you got to say for the Portland Timbers is the fact that they defended much better in that game against the Galaxy compared to any of the games that they have. Yeah, that just kind of says the tale of this Portland Timbers side. It just kind of feels like what the Timbers have in this disastrous start to begin the year is very similar to what we saw back in 2024 and 23 as well, where we know this team can score goals and they have a lot of dangerous weapon going for on the attack, but on the defensive side they are very bad. And let's also not to mention they're still have Phil Neville as their head coach, and how I've said before, Phil Neville seems like he might be the next one to go, and that it's been 3 years of mediocrity, and with this year feels like it's kind of the same thing again. You just kind of had a sense that Phil Neville, his time with the Timbers is especially coming to an end, and especially it feels like the other thing I think they mentioned in the last game of his frustration, and he didn't really quite see eye to eye with Mara Paulson, the owner for the Portland Timbers. Something tells me that there might be some big decision that they will have to make, and it's going to be really a matter of time before I think we might eventually see the firing of Phil Neville as well. But until then, it's just been a disastrous start for this Timber side. We look at RSL, and finally, I get to put a team not in the disastrous category. I mean, I put a lot of team here in the bottom category. Now, finally, get to talk about some positive with some of these teams. And RSL is definitely one of those teams that is definitely in the positive category as well. And for RSL, they alongside of the Sales and Earthquakes are probably the biggest surprise package in the Western Conference. And what RSL has done that has been a huge surprise package is the fact that they have trusted their young guns to perform, and those young guns respond by performing out of this world right now. I mean, a lot of these guys heading into this season got guys like Salons and Hezekani and all these guys. You probably have never heard of these guys, but yet these guys are performing such an incredible rate that even when they started to get some of their healthy starter back, I mean, for Pablo Mascherani, he has really no option to put some of his healthy starter back in this team because all his young guns are still performing relatively well. And then I think the other thing besides the revelation of these young guns performing well for RSL, finally got some of the signings that they've done in the transfer market, and some of them finally turns out to be a hit, because that was the problem for RSL in the past couple of years, where most of the signings that they have has been turned into bust. But guys like Ulatunji and also Gilavogi that they got this offseason, it turns out that he's starting to become a star of this RSL team, and could really help a lot, at least on the attacking end. And when you combine that with the young players performing very well, it's no surprise the fact that they are right up there in the top of the standings. And even in the 2-2 draw that they had against San Diego, that was a game that just kind of shows you how dangerous RSL can be. If they can go toe to toe with San Diego and able to still overcome adversity that they had to face multiple times in that game against a top tier Western Conference team, yeah, this is a team that is definitely not only for real, but a team that could be a dark horse heading into the season in the West. Now, speaking of San Diego, I'm going to put them right here. Yes, the draw against RSL was kind of frustrating because they almost had a chance to get another massive 3 points. But for the most part, it's been a good start to the season for San Diego. Yes, the game against Toluca was an absolute disaster, but I don't think a lot of people are surprised by that. I mean, I've said this many times before. Anytime when you go down to Mexico with a slim lead, or even have to get a result, it usually doesn't go so well for you. And now you minus the fact that San Diego doesn't have their best defender, and the fact that no Toluca, they look like they had a point to prove in that game in the second leg as well. So no surprise the fact that they fall apart and eventually got eliminated. But that hasn't really affected their league play. Their league play has been pretty good throughout the season. Dare I say, maybe even better than what we saw last season as well. I mean, Arnold Schwarz is still performing at the rate that he is, but they're now getting other scoring threat as well. So yeah, for the San Diego team, I think they'll be very happy, even though it was a little disappointing how they exited the CONCACAF Champions Cup. And then for the San Jose Earthquakes, let's make it a hat trick of teams that have gone to a dream starts. Crazy how I put a hat trick of team off to a disastrous start, and now I'm putting a hat trick of team being in the dream start category. And as I said many times with the Quakes this season, these two teams, RSL and San Jose, they're two teams that I've said are probably the biggest surprise. If I'm biased, I'll put the San Jose Earthquakes as probably the biggest surprise because I am a Quakes fans, and I'm gonna be maybe even a little biased by saying the start for the Quakes is probably even more surprising than RSL because this team I picked them to finish dead last in my prediction, and it feels like it's deja vu all over again where I picked the team that finished dead last in the Western Conference will have a great season just like what I did with Vancouver last season, and that team only went all the way to MLS Cup. Now I will also still say that I'm not going to get ahead of myself in saying that means the San Jose Earthquakes will finish second, like Vancouver did last season, and go all the way to MLS Cup. But the fact that this team has been playing so well, and now when they are facing against real opposition and still are looking well, especially on the defensive end, yeah, there's no reason why I said that this team is definitely for real, and this is a team that, again, whatever Bruce Arena magic that he has in his second season, it really needs to be studied more than the fact that we still don't know exactly what he did wrong that got him out of that mess with New England. But what really needs to be studied is how in the world is he continue to create this wizardry, especially as I'll probably do a video talk about the Quakes themselves because after all they are my team, and I've always said that I want to do more video on the Quakes. I'm just gonna say definitely talk about how Bruce Arena not only with that second year wizardry, but his wizardry in terms of continuing to develop some good young American center backs and turn them into a star. Yeah, that needs to be studied as well. Now we look at Seattle. It's an ideal start for the Seattle Sounders. I think the Sounders, I know where they are in the standings, might not look impressive, but remember, this team have not played a home game since the first game of the season. And I know they did play technically a home game in the second leg in the CONCACAF Champions Cup against Vancouver, but that was in Spokane. They're still in the midst of this 5-game road trip, and the fact that they not only have stayed above water in this road trip, but are able to get wins as well, which is a huge bonus. While they're also battling for CONCACAF Champions Cup, I think the Seattle Sounders is going to be a problem again this season, and once they do get those home games as well, and especially once they started to get more healthy as well. I don't know exactly when the timeline of Pedro de la Vega will be back, but once he is back in this team, oh boy, yeah, this team can look even more dangerous on the attack than what we are. And also, let's not forget about that defense as well. I mean, it's no surprise that once they're much more healthy on the defensive end, yeah, that defense is just absolutely locked down right now. Now we look at St. Louis. I'm gonna put St. Louis here again. No St. Louis fan might feel like it's not the start that they wanted. I put them pretty high, but I'm gonna say the same reason I say about St. Louis, the same I say about Sporting KC. The effort is definitely there with St. Louis, and it is pretty obvious that the big problem with this team is on the attacking end. We knew this was gonna be the case, and this is where I said it many times before. I think they're gonna figure that out at least in the summer transfer window. Corey Ray will definitely most likely spend big in terms of addressing that issue, but for the most part not only the effort is definitely there for the St. Louis team, but their defense have definitely played much better the season compared to last year, and that's definitely a good thing as well because last season that defense was a disaster, and it was the case in the previous year as well. If they can fix that, which they seems like they have, and now that they get some more attacking talent in the second half of the season, this team can definitely sneak up on a lot of people and cause some big surprise in the second half of the season as well. And then lastly, we're going to talk about the Vancouver Whitecaps. I'm going to put Vancouver a little lower than what maybe some Whitecaps fans think that they should. They probably should be a little bit higher. But I think for the Whitecaps, it is pretty clear that the start of this season is not as great as what we saw last season as well. Even though I know they have almost identical record compared to last season and the beginning of the season, it's just the way that they play under for Sorensen. It just doesn't look as good as what we saw last season as well. Now, that is a very high bar to set because last season I mentioned how much a wagon they were, where they were looking like absolutely unstoppable. It's hard to replicate that for the second year in a row. But even if they haven't replicated that, even though they kind of take a little bit of a small step back, especially that CONCACAF Champions Cup game against Seattle, it's gonna be very disappointing how they exited. I thought that was gonna be a competitive game, and it definitely didn't. Turns out to be, for the most part, Vancouver's still a very, very good team. Now, of course, with the way that they have kind of took a little step back and not as good as they were last season, that I think maybe will concern Whitecaps fan because as much as I talk about this team being a top tier team and a team that can definitely compete for MLS Cup, well, we'll see whether or not if they can be at that level again like they did last season, and they need to be because when you look at these other teams that they might have to battle for a position to finish near the top of the West, and also teams that they might have to face in the Western Conference. I mean, if let's say Vancouver, if they play Seattle again, especially in the playoffs, and if Seattle does get home field advantage, well, that's a really tough matchup for Vancouver. And I'll even throw in the rematch of the Western Conference Final as well. They play San Diego right now. With the way that San Diego has been playing relatively well to begin the season, I will think San Diego probably would have could take care of their business against this Vancouver team as well. So again, that just kind of shows you the fact that the level they are, while it's still relatively high, while they are still considered to be one of the better team in the West, I think it has dipped a little bit, and that's maybe will be a little concern for Jasper Sorensen and these Whitecaps fans. The fact that, when you have other opposition that are doing just as better as you are, what's going to happen once we get to those stage where, again, there's big expectation if you're a Whitecaps fan. This is a team that is expecting to once again go deep in the playoffs and trying to get the job that was left unfinished in the last game. But right now, at least in the beginning of the year, they just haven't really looked like a team that I would say are ready to compete for a championship. And of course, that can always change, especially with the way that when you have this team play so many games in quick succession, maybe that fatigue has started to kind of catch up to this team a little bit as well. But there you have it. That is pretty much it for the emotion index. As always, let me know in the comments below what do you think of this video. And as always, if I put your team maybe a little too high in the emotion index or too low, let me know in the comments below as always. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.